Welcome to another edition of our MDM Amplify podcast, which is all about elevating vendor voices and industry solutions that serve distributors. This episode is sponsored by BigCommerce, a commerce solution provider servicing numerous B2B wholesale distributors. I'm Mike Hockett, MDM's executive editor. We at MDM have long covered digital transformation as one of our core content pillars. And when you think of digital transformation, you probably think of the technology and the many different tools distributors are adding and upgrading to modernize and become more efficient. But amid discussions on that topic, it's incredibly easy to overlook the human component of that equation. While technology is the tool, people remain the tool holder. This means that technology ROI in distribution is inextricably dependent upon how well staff are able to use it. This episode features an in-depth discussion between distribution digital commerce and AI expert Devashish Saxena, BigCommerce General Manager Lance Owide, and myself about why digital transformation is a human-first concept. We also cover if AI has lost any steam in business conversations, what the role of a chief AI officer is and should be, and being intentional with e-commerce strategy, and more. Enjoy. Devashish, Lance, welcome to this MDM Amplify podcast.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
It's always good to start off with a little bit of background. So, Devashish, would you mind giving us a quick bio or a snapshot of your background?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Mike. I always describe my background as sort of the sweet spot between the exponential evolution of technology and, at best, a linear ability of businesses to use it to create value and impact. And between those two lines is sort of where I've grown my career, specifically mostly in the B2B space. Outside of my early tech days, I call it my code monkey days, some consulting, but then outside of that, just B2B, both on the manufacturing side with firms like TI and PPG, and then on the distribution side with Rexel, Farnell, and most recently Imperial Dade. So yeah, definitely a B2B. I think I often joke that I've done it all from semiconductor chips to toilet paper in terms of understanding how to merchandise and sell online. So that's the brief bio.
Great to have you here. And Lance, same to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if Devashish is that sweet spot. What's my sweet spot? Maybe my sweet spot is the career pivot. So I'm a little different from that. My background is actually in finance, so investment management, investment banking, time in private equity, which I guess in this time in manufacturing distribution, and particularly in distribution with all the consolidation happening, is particularly apt. Lots happening obviously in the private equity space, but I joined BigCommerce 4 years ago. I'm the VP and GM of B2B here. I look after the success of all of the manufacturers and distributors on the platform, in particular those distributors that obviously are looking to leverage that online channel to drive revenue growth and operational efficiency. Absolutely love this topic. Really excited to be diving in with you today, Mike. So thank you for having us.
Well, definitely an interesting combination of backgrounds here and perspectives. So let's dive in with Devashish. You have, like, as you mentioned, an extensive technology background, but I have seen you emphasize in different articles and posts that digital transformation is a human journey for technology rather than the other way around. And I think it can be hard for a lot of distribution executives to fully grasp that concept. They think of digital transformation as purely a technology-driven initiative. So can you elaborate on why digital transformation is a human-first concept instead of it being all about the technology itself?
Yeah, that's a good question, and maybe I'll end with a conversation that I had earlier this week that brought that to life. But the way I think about it, Mike, is if you break that down, so you're going to build this technology, and it's the quintessential why is the 5 whys. Remember that? So it's like, why are you going to build this technology? In most cases, at some point, you're going to say because you want some human to use it. Sometimes technology is built so other technologies can use it, and we're going to have more and more of that in the coming years. But eventually, there's a human being that's going to use the technology. Then the question is, why will they use it? Right? What's going to change for them as a result of using it? Do things get easier, better? what changes for us if they use it? So it's sort of with that framework that that's sort of my the essence of the idea of being human centric is understand who you're building the technology for, how what benefits they will get from the technology, because if you have that frame in mind, then you're going to design and build the technology in a way that they will use it. And at the end of the day, there are the why side of this. So this is the who. The why is there is a hope or a hypothesis that when they use it, certain things will happen, not just in terms of benefits that they get, but also benefits that I get, hopefully with some dollar numbers assigned to it. And so all of that resides on the premise that somebody will use it. And so, yeah, so my this emphasis on being human centric is to not just get so, you can't be tech led in building without understanding who you're building for, why you're building it, because that means that you're gonna, if you have that, you're gonna build sort of, you don't have to chase adoption later.
Yeah, that's a great perspective.
That's how I think about it.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And I think the human element gets so overlooked here when we're talking about AI tools and these bleeding edge technology tools that distributors might think that if they invest a lot into these, great technologies, that's going to solve all their problems, when really it's the people that are using them. You can have the greatest technology in the world, but if you don't have the staff equipped to leverage it correctly, the ROI is going to be very limited here. So, Lance, I'd love to get your additional follow-up here on the human element in digital transformation.
Yeah, firstly, I'll add something to what Devashish said, and maybe I don't know if this is the right thing to. I'm going to kind of paraphrase / quote him on a podcast he's on. We were on a project together recently, and he started that project effectively by saying, "Let's remember and remind ourselves the reason that we're doing this is to deliver better customer experience. As we deliver better customer experience, our NPS will increase, and that will lead to an improved share of wallet from our customers." And as we improve that share of wallet from our current customers, we can grow the customer base because we're going to relieve our sales teams of the manual workload that they currently have, whether that's data entry or customer service. Now we can automate that, and we're going to be able to grow organically our customer base that way too. And I thought that really recaptured that. Ultimately, as we think about digital, that's what this is all about. There's also an internal piece to that, though, right? And I think a lot of when we say external, we think build it and they will come. No, that doesn't happen, to your point there, Mike. But also internally, how do we make sure that we're aligned as a business to we're aligned as a business to this transformation, and that the transformation is delivering ultimately on our business goals? Mm-hmm. Is our goal to drive revenue? Is our goal to drive margin? What are we trying to achieve, and how does the technology deliver that for us? And then are our executives, not just in this digital team or e-commerce team, aligned that the technology will deliver on that? I was talking to $1 billion distributor actually in Sydney last week. We had our big e-commerce event out in Sydney last week. I was on stage with a $1 billion distributor, and they effectively said, we put our entire digital transformation on pause for 3 months because we got midway through and realized our sales teams weren't aligned. We hadn't convinced them that this was going to drive revenue growth for the business and that it was going to be beneficial to them. And they effectively turned around and said, yeah, I don't know if we'll use it. And they realized we need to pause. Now, they should have figured that out earlier, but realizing that during the process, I think, is incredibly important and having the fortitude to say, okay, let's pause and let's make sure you're aligned to the vision. Because if we're not aligned internally, when we release our brand new experience that we want all of our customers to drive to, but our sales team are going to push back against this isn't going to end well. And so driving that alignment internally, I also think, is incredibly important. From sales to customer service, to operations, everyone should feel like they have a say, like they are owners of the project. Their input is being sought after, and then obviously that it's feeding into the project itself.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think There's the humans that you're building the technology for, and then there's all the humans that get impacted when you bring this technology to life. And all of those humans are important in how you bring this to life if you want to truly get to those end impact goals that you've set.
Well said. Well, I want to dive into specifically into AI here, which alongside tariffs remains the talking point, it seems like, in any business conversation right now. And we at MDM have covered AI as a technology topic for around a decade now in some form or another, but certainly much more extensively over the past 3 to 4 years since ChatGPT and agentic AI have really flourished as a tool in distribution. But even so, we are seeing that the appetite for AI thought leadership, case studies, and just the how-to advice topics, it remains robust. Know that we're seeing, when you look at the AI hype cycle charts that people have out there, most people say we're kind of past the apex of that hype cycle and a little bit on our way down. But I'm curious what you two are seeing and hearing out there in terms of, has AI lost any steam among business conversations, or is it as hyped as ever? So I guess, Lance, do you want to start off with that one?
Yeah, I find this topic is sort of funny. I think distributors in the world are looking at everyone else saying, "Yeah, we've been using AI for years. What are you? This isn't new." Whether that's demand forecasting, dynamic pricing, fraud detection, AI has been used by distributors for many years. That's why you guys have been covering it. The difference this time, I think, it is really this agentic AI, right? It's moving AI out of back office, what was predominantly a lot of back office operations, and into more of that sales workflow, marketing, customer service, content generation. As you talk about that sort of hype cycle, I do think we definitely overestimate in the short term, but underestimate in the long term. And I do believe that AI is going to be truly transformative for the way distributors operate. Firstly, just through that generative AI and automation, right? The barriers to experimenting with new content, to creating that, to building different customer interfaces, and the way you interact with that customer is so much lower than it has ever been before. For sales teams, having AI in their pocket that suggests cross-sell and upsell recommendations based on the millions of orders that you've taken throughout the history of the business. What do people often buy together? Helping sales reps respond to quotes faster, pre-written with pre-recommended additions into that quote. That's hugely beneficial. And we're seeing that happen already, right? And that's just on the positive side. Also flagging those customers that it looks like, oh, they haven't purchased in a while. They may be churning. So really optimizing times of teams, whether that's salespeople, customer service people. I think, though, the next step is going to move towards kind of the selling itself. Like, how do we sell into the future? And to your point, I think in the short term this is a little overhyped, but over the sort of 3-year time horizon, I really don't think this is. I think AI is going to completely change the way that B2B businesses and distributors who are selling and those that are purchasing interact. Right? I like to use a kind of B2C comparison here because I think it's useful. When I go and I purchase something for myself, I like the experience. There's emotions. It's experiential. I enjoy that experience of logging onto a site. If I'm purchasing, and we were talking about fasteners just before we came onto the podcast, I'm like, if I'm purchasing fasteners, that's not an emotional purchase, right? There is purely practical. I need a fastener that does the job, fits the use case. Where's the inventory? When can I get it? How much is it going to cost? That's it, right? Do you have that doesn't need a fancy looking web page. It needs something that can deliver the information to me when I need it in, not if it's possible, a nice human interface context instead of, something that nice looking web page. And that to me is where we're going to go. And so for me, for the long tail kind of customer, I think you have to split up. If you're a distributor, large distributor, I think you sort of have to split your long tail and your core customers here. The long tail, AI is going to be driving transactional speed for you, right? Guiding discovery, guiding that sale itself. If I hit that website, I'm a large distributor and I'm putting my customer straight into an interface that can interact with them and answer their questions. I need the fastener for this specific use case. It needs to be able to meet these requirements. Here you go. Here's the product. It just sped up that purchase flow dramatically. I can speed up the onboarding, everything about that. process can speed up from the onboarding to the sale to the return, everything. For your core strategic accounts, big businesses are building their own AIs. I think as a distributor, you're going to have to think about how do you connect into that? How do you get your data into their internal procurement models, into their internal AI, such that they can place an order like e-procurement or punch out on steroids? And I think that's the future. So I don't think it's overhyped. I think people are still really excited about it. We're probably getting a bit too ahead of ourselves in the kind of 1 to 2 year timeline, but 3 years and on, I think the excitement is all warranted. We're going to see huge changes, especially in distribution. This is a way to get back margin. I'm curious what Devashish is going to say if he agrees with me.
Yeah,
So,
Devashish, I like just inserting my perspective real quick. I think it's the number of use cases that just keeps growing seemingly exponentially. That's what makes this so exciting, and I think that's why it's an endless discussion point right now. That there still is all this appetite for AI because people are, as they're watching and learning how to use it, they're discovering more use cases in distribution, a lot of which you just covered, Lance, but there's more use cases that are going to be developed over the next 6 months that we can't even think about right now, or just can only start to think about. So this is going to keep continuing for quite a while. Devashish, definitely want to get your thoughts here.
yeah, look, so a couple of thoughts. One, 100% agree that this is truly a transformative technology, and especially with the emergence of generative AI and the evolution of agentic, which leads to my second. Just think about what agentic AI means. It means that every piece of software can be rewritten as an agentic system. You can put the power of, you can. Whether you should is a different question. I'll come to that's my third point. Every piece of software can be embedded with the power of LLMs. And that power of LLM, speak about exponential, is literally every 2 weeks is growing like this, at least for now. So yes, there's a lot that can be done. And that's why I've said this in a few conversations, is this kind of reminds me of the .com era, because when we went through that 99, 2000, 2001, that's how it felt. It felt like, oh my God, we can truly transform how we do business from end to end, right? And that's your point around there are so many use cases. So the third thing though is, and it's the same thing that we had to go through as businesses 25 years ago. And that's the definition of strategy. Where do you want to play?
Yeah.
And where should you not play? And that's where I think firms and business leaders and distribution companies need to spend their time, right? Just because something can be done doesn't mean it should be done, right? My dad, one of his great sayings was, doing something really well that should never should be done at all is the biggest waste of time. Applies to your personal life and applies to your businesses. So I think the third piece is for leaders to really, and that's where I often, and it goes back to this idea of leading with tech. Don't build an AI strategy. Lean in on your business strategy. And if you don't know what that is, spend time there, understand your customers, and figure out how you're going to create value. And then come back and say, okay, where do I use AI to help me do this? So you got to start on the other end.
Yeah. There has never been a shinier object to chase than AI. And to your point, I think we're now at the point where distributors are getting much more focused with these use cases rather than just seeing and hearing all the amazing things that AI can do and investing in it out of fear of missing out. I think that it's much more intentional strategy that's going into these conversations now, just much more mature AI conversations than we were seeing 2 years ago.
That's good.
So then continuing with this, it's been amazing to see how fast the role of a chief AI officer has proliferated in this distribution industry. Just 3 years ago, I don't remember seeing any distributor that had at least announced a dedicated executive title for chief AI. But starting around 2023, that's when I began to see these news announcements of distributors, primarily large publicly traded ones, that had appointed a chief AI officer. Plenty of others have followed, while many others have just tasked their chief digital or chief technology officer with those AI direction responsibilities. So, Devashish, as Imperial Dade's former chief digital officer, what are your thoughts on how distributors are delegating that AI strategy among their leadership?
Yeah, this is I'm also adjuncting at Carnegie Mellon and associated with their executive education program right now, and and they have a chief data and AI officer exec education program. So I'm part of that. So I see a lot of rising talent that wants those roles. And it's what's interesting to me is what I think about is two things. One is why businesses would do that, and then I see a lot of parallels to when chief digital officer role was being created, because I think there is a lot of similarities, right? You create these roles at at a senior level to act as a catalyst, to act as a point of accountability, and to act to show execution and impact, right? Because it's otherwise it's often the case that it's what's that saying? When everybody tries to do something, nothing really happens. There's a version of that, but I think what it is, hey, look, it's a statement from the firm that this is an area that is important to us. It's important to our business, and we want to make sure that we make meaningful progress and create value for ourselves and our customers by its use. And so I think that's a good thing. Right now, what I've generally seen over time is that that there's also a great HBR article that just came out, which sort of argues the other side. It's like, don't assume that you can just create a CAIO role and then you're done. Which is something I've personally seen as often the first CDO in organizations, and then companies tend to relax. Like, oh, we got Devashish now; it's not my problem anymore. So it's a much broader lift that has to come to play. But generally speaking, I think if it's an area of importance and you want to make sure that the enterprise rallies around it, then having a senior leadership and putting a spotlight on it is a good way to drive it.
Lance, any follow up here on the role of the chief AI officer and what distributors are doing with it?
Yeah, I think kind of what Devashish said there is really apt, which is very often you could bring in that chief AI officer and think, there we go, jump in. We've passed it off to someone else now. We don't have to worry about it. And all the other leaders just take a sigh of relief because everyone's been asking me, what am I going to do in AI? The salesperson's been worrying, customer support have been worrying. Now we've got someone, I don't have to worry about it. And to Devashish's point, it's more of a catalyst, right? Someone who can drive that strategy, have to build that strategy, but it still needs everyone else across the business to be leaned in and bought into that vision and strategy that they can then build together.
Yeah.
And part of it, bringing those use cases, right? You mentioned there are so many use cases, and so that person would really help bring those use. Sorry, Devashish, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to add, it's like, some of the things that we were talking about earlier about ensuring that you're not getting too focused on an AI strategy versus really understanding how you want to use AI to accelerate your business strategy. I think that caution should most apply to a newly appointed CAIO, because it's very tempting when you have the term AI in your title to say, hey, I'm responsible for creating the AI strategy for the organization. And that's often not a good place to start. A good place to start is really, those roles have to see themselves as enterprise leaders who have to work with the broader business to really understand where they can help accelerate and optimize.
All right. Well, switching gears here, Lance, you and the commerce team just held your big summit August 18th and 19th in Austin, Texas. Can you, two-part question here, can you give us a bit of a recap of the highlights of that event, and then any of the biggest or most interesting things that you picked up from conversations or sessions with attendees there in terms of what was on their mind and what they were talking about?
Yeah, Big Summit 2025 here in Austin, Texas. It was our largest, most ambitious ever, 1,000 plus thought leaders, distributors, manufacturers, retailers in the space at ACL Live, which is a really cool venue. Willie Nelson has played there. Many, many other very, very famous people. So to share the stage with them is a lot of fun. Lots of breakout sessions. We actually have a specific dedicated B2B track throughout the day where all we're talking about all day is B2B. We had a VIP B2B program too, where we invited association members and leaders from specific B2B associations to come and join us. That was a lot of fun. The first time we've done that, talking about very specifically, Mike, what are we seeing in the B2B space? It's some amazing big brands on stage from Dell, Arrow Fasteners, Mavora, Biorad. Ella Hershey from IDC was on stage as well, sharing her insights. AI was obviously a key topic. Everyone's worrying about it. From what do we do internally, but also how do I get my products, information, my data into the LLM models where I know, especially that long tail that I mentioned, is starting searches today, right? This isn't just a B2C problem, it's a B2B problem too. And we shared what we're doing in that space with our business Feedonomics, sharing that product data directly into the likes of Perplexity and other agentic and LLM models so that you can be showing up in, that number one spot when someone's typing in a question that's relevant to your product. And also walking through what does that next step mean, right? It's not just about product data anymore. It's about review data and unstructured data and technical specifications. And how do you get that information in? And even the LLMs, the chat GPTs and the Perplexities and the Copilots, they haven't quite figured that out yet. So a large topic on how do you structure that data, and we walk through, start putting that on your website. If you're not doing it today, start building in those customer reviews. Even in B2B, it is relevant. FAQs, how do you use the products? What do what should you be, how can you use them? Those tech specs, if they're not on your website, get them on your sites now on those PDPs, because ChatGPT is scraping them. And again, for your core business, that's probably not as relevant. They're probably coming to your site anyway. But for that long tail, they're moving out. They're starting to start their searches on those AIs, on those AI tools. But outside of that, I really think agility. If I had to pick one word from the distributors in the audience who were on stage and at our customer advisory board as well, which we held the day after, it was agility. We have one very large $30 billion distributor of food packaging. Won't name them. They're part of our customer advisory board. So everything out there is, said behind closed doors. But it was about how everything is changing so fast. Everything is moving incredibly quickly. We need platforms, technologies that allow us to flex quickly. We're also growing inorganically, making new purchases. It's no longer acceptable for us to wait 6 months to integrate that business, to spin up a new website for that business, to be able to cross-sell and upsell. We got to do it faster. Also, real focus on ROI. Margins are being squeezed. And as we think about, digital leaders who I'm sure are listening to this, thinking about what is the next year, 2 years look like, we have to prove the ROI of those projects. Really important. But core to it was really that agility. We want to move fast, whether that's the technologies that we use, plugging in new technologies incredibly quickly. Can my e-commerce handle that? Can my PIM handle it? Well, my ERP? Do I need to think about platforming my ERP, which just everyone cringes at today? Pricing data. We talk about AI-powered pricing. How do I optimize my pricing across different channels and for different inventory? That was really it. And then creating a culture. Devashish mentioned people. Often distribution, I shouldn't say it. I might get some nasty emails and Slack messages and LinkedIn's after this. It's a little bit slow. It's an old, we're a slow moving beast on the distribution side. Building agility into culture. I was quite surprised how often that came up. How do we speed up change management, enable more junior people to make those changes and move faster because they understand the technologies? I thought that was really interesting. How do you build a culture of change and test and learn and in this environment where anyone can go and play around with an AI tool and test something out? Obviously, thinking about security as well, and making sure obviously your data is not being shared outside externally, etc. But yeah, it was a great event. Lots of great discussions.
My invitation got lost in the mail there, man.
I think you're on vacation, Devashish.
Okay.
Well, that's great. It sounds like a fantastic event. And You two had an excellent podcast conversation on BigCommerce's own B2B Bytes channel earlier this spring, in which the heart of the conversation was really about identifying your why and your purpose with e-commerce. And I don't want to make you rehash that entire episode, which I will link to in the description of this podcast, but I think it'd be good for our audience to hear how you would boil down that key talking point of finding purpose and intentionality with e-commerce rather than having it just for the sake of it existing. So, Devashish, do you want to touch on that intentionality point when it comes to e-commerce?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Mike, to some extent, we've sort of been talking about it, right? When you're human-centered and you understand the who and you understand the why, both on their end as well as what we are trying to accomplish, then even e-commerce shifts from being looked at as a transaction to a journey, right? And then I think distributors who understand their customers' journeys around the e-commerce, right? Because it's not just a buy happens. There's things that happen before it that lead to it, and there's things that happen afterwards. And I think some of the things we talked about being human centric, I think it sort of covers that, right? It allows you to take a more journey oriented, holistic approach to supporting e-commerce because you truly understand who your customers are, what journeys they go through as they make their purchasing decision, what information is important to them, what decisions are they trying to make, and how can you surface that. And then I had another thought, which is tied to the AI, which is if you really did a lot of that, then you wouldn't be in a position where some companies are. Tying back to what Lance was talking about, hey, you really need to surface this kind of content. I was talking to a firm, and in our conversation, little sidetrack here, Mike, the question was, how do I know what FAQs I should put on my product page? I said, well, these are the questions that your customers would ask about your products. So you've got two choices. You can find out, or you can trust an agency to figure that out for you. But you got to know that. And that ties to, I guess the reason I'm telling that story is this approach that we talked about, Lance and I talked about, I think it was a great conversation, is not just for e-commerce. It's applicable to your ability to really bring all kinds of technologies to life. Lance, would you agree?
Yeah, completely. I think that's such a great. Never before have the potentially, hundreds of thousands of hours of customer call service data been more valuable, or those emails that have come through the CRM. And we actually have the tools now that can mine that data efficiently and pull out those frequently asked questions. So distributors out there, you might not realize that you have a treasure trove of incredibly valuable data that you can go through to pull that information out. I think the only thing I would add to that is, let's be clear, right? We dived really deep there and we're talking about AI. People are at different stages of this digital transformation as a business. There are a lot of distributors out there that don't really have a true e-commerce presence today. They're not really selling online. And so I think also that why is, anchored in business value, but also realizing you don't need to do everything all at once. Figure out what that why is and what are the most simple steps you can take to delivering on that why as you go through that digital transformation. There are so many distributors that I speak to who try to bite off the entire apple on day one. It's like, you don't have a site yet. Don't worry about AI. You're not transacting online. Don't concern yourself yet. Let's just get you online, even if it's not transactional. Get your product catalog up there, a registration page, start incrementally. And I think that to me is also a key piece, right? Obviously, anchoring the why. Think about the steps you can take to get there. You don't have to do everything all at once.
Sometimes there's so much value to be unlocked just with process simplification and standardization. And I know there's a lot of distributors who have a lot of value locked up because they haven't done that yet.
And then continuing here, I know, Lance, you mentioned how, traditionally this is an industry where companies are behind B2C when it comes to e-commerce and overall digital progress. I don't want to call them laggards, but it definitely slower to adopt and mature with technology compared to B2C. So there's certainly plenty of exceptions. And of course, the larger, the more substantial distributors tend to have more resources and have a more robust offering here. But in terms of matching customer expectations is what I want to get to here, and trying to get your opinions on where distributors, the overall industry is at right now in terms of how big is that gap between customer expectations and how distributors are delivering on it in terms of their commerce offerings out there. Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Is it staying about level? So I guess, Devashish, your thoughts or opinion here on that gap between expectations and delivery, and how distributors are, are they doing better or are they getting worse at it?
Yeah, maybe Lance would probably have a better, broader view on that specific question, given that he's probably engaging with a much broader set of distributors. But what I would say is there, I suspect firms are all over the map, right? It goes back to what we were talking about. My approach has always been to understand and be able to quantify it. At Imperial Date, for instance, in the first 6 months that I was there, we launched what we called our minimum lovable product with pilot customers. And one of the questions our commercial leaders asked me was, Devashish, you talk about measurements all the time. How are you going to measure love? And we laughed, and I said, I will actually be measuring love. It's called the NPS. And we will be responding to it on a daily, weekly basis. And that optimization process is how I will know what my gap is between expectations and reality, and how good I am in closing and narrowing that gap over time.
Look forward to telling my wife.
You have a brother.
Look
What's
forward to
that?
telling my wife when she gets home that we're now measuring love in NPS.
I have not tried the NPS at home.
Let me know how that conversation goes. Yeah.
Here's the weekly survey. Could you fill it out, please, so that we can figure out the right level?
At home, I get feedback every dinner, so it's all good.
Fair. That's very fair. Maybe to add to that, I think Devashish is spot on. Like it's a huge spectrum from those that have sales team only, no online experience. Send that order however you want, fax, email, text, don't care. Our sales teams are here to serve you. They will bend over backwards to make that happen. But none of that is automated. So you're getting an incredible level of customer service. But if you want to go and track that order on a Sunday night, absolutely no way. Or even any night, because the sales team went home at 5, customer service team went home at 6. There's no way to get that all the way to everything exists on our online experience, regardless of the channel that it came through, right? I don't care if your order came through EDI. You can see it online. You can track it online. You can return it online. You can find your warranties. Everything exists, right? So the spectrum is huge. What I think is really important, though, is figuring out your niche. What is it that you want to excel at, that your customers really care about? And I think Devashish really honed in on this week. And I'll give you an example. At that big summit, we held our one in Americas. We held our one in Sydney a week ago. I was on stage with one of the leaders at eCommerce at Saxena Automotive. It's like a $15 billion business, huge conglomerate business, big distribution business. They have, I don't even remember the number of suppliers they have. She walked me through it. It is a very large business. Their niche, though, is that they're servicing these B2B businesses with trailers and trucks, and they're often customized and they are different. So their niche is understanding your specific truck and the parts that you need when you need that replacement part. What they've done is they've built in this huge database, all of their customers, all of the trucks they own, and all of the parts that fit in that truck. So when you go to when you're on their site, you can either fill that data in yourself, or they will actually send someone out to review the truck and make a log of all of that info. So now when you hit that site and you need a part, you're not guessing anymore. It's there. It tells you, and you know it's right because they've confirmed it. Personalization, just an incredible experience. And so I think for each distribution business, that's very specific to automotive. But for each distribution business, what's your niche where you can provide something that's a little bit different, where you can leverage that technology to get a really, really great experience? And that's just so, in Chicago, her example was, these are very large, obviously, haulage trucking businesses. They take it into the engineering team. The engineering team come up with greasy hands. They're looking at this part. They have no idea what it is, but they know that when they log into Simi, they can see that's the part. And the next step is they're going to be able to take a picture of it. AI is going to match it and just be able to place that order. So that to me is key. You don't have to be all the way. Everything's online, but what can you do to leverage technology to really empower your customers and give them a great experience?
And I think that's a great point where like we always talk about the Amazon like experience, but no distributor is going to be able to out Amazon. But what they can do is excel where Amazon lacks. And that's in that technical specification. It's that service side and differentiating to what your customers down to the exact, servicing their truck, not just anyone's truck, but specification, I think is huge there. And that's something Amazon can't match. So I think that's how distributors can close that gap. It's great stuff.
Yeah, it's the human side and the knowledge and the relationship side and how that evolves as you bring more digital into the mix is really the journey for distributors.
Well, BigCommerce just announced a company rebrand at the end of July, changing its corporate name to commerce.com. And that's a move that the company said unifies its three key offerings, which is BigCommerce, Feedonomics, and MakeSwift under one parent brand. But those three different offerings still maintain their branding as distinct products. So, Lance, this is definitely a better question for the marketing team, but is there anything else that our audience of distributors should know about what this rebrand means?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this rebrand. I think for distributors out there, commerce as just selling things is getting more complex and more connected than ever. The lines between offline and online just they're blurring. That experience is blurring, and data is becoming more important than ever. The importance of your customer data, we spoke about that. The importance of your product data, that technical specification data, and how you use it is more important than ever. And for the past kind of 3 years, we've seen this evolution coming, and we've made some core acquisitions to bolt on to our BigCommerce B2B e-commerce platform. That first one is Feedonomics. And Feedonomics, for those who aren't familiar, is the world's leading product feed management tool. It's used by, on the B2C side, 30% of the IR 1000. Think for those who wear Allbirds, Dell, Estee Lauder, L'Oreal, Patagonia, these huge those are manufacturers too, but often direct-to-consumer brands. They're using it to send their product data to Amazon and their advertisements off to Google and various other places. But it's also used by distributors because it is, at its core, an engine that can ingest data, normalize it, and send it off to any downstream system. That could be a PIM or even another distributor. So taking as an example, RS Group, RS Components, they're a customer of Feedonomics. They've got a very, very large catalog. They're getting in data from it's like thousands of suppliers. Feedonomics is taking that data and it's normalizing it, and then it's sending it off to downstream distributors as well. And what we've done with this rebrand is bring that under one roof, unifying the teams as well that support it and sell it. So now when we go to market, we're not just saying, hey, come and sell online. We're saying, hey, come and sell online, but also we've got the solve for getting your data from your suppliers, normalizing it and getting it to where it needs to go. That might not just be your e-commerce, but your PIM, your downstream systems, maybe other distributors too. On top of that, we've also got MakeSwift. It's one of the best visual editors for your site on the market. Obviously, it sits on top of BigCommerce. We actually just had someone deploy it on Magento as well. It is platform agnostic. So really excited about that. And for us, bringing this together is really about helping our distribution customers succeed, right? Selling online, getting your data where it needs to go, and that includes into AI, and then being able to visually wow your business, your customers, your buyers when they hit that site. Obviously, as AI changes some of that, will be on the forefront. It's built into MakeSwift. If you want to build a page, you can say, hey, I want to build a new page for that particular widget. Help me design it, and it will do it for you.
Well, that unification makes a lot of sense. And Alongside that rebrand, the other big news out of Commerce is its partnership with Pros, which is a fellow regular client of MDM and NAW that we've done a lot of work with. We're actually writing a white paper with them right now. And obviously, distribution commerce and pricing go hand in hand. But can you touch on the why behind that partnership, Lance, and what that combo does for the market here?
Yeah. When I think about distribution, I think three things. I think selection, I think inventory, and I think price. And you've got to compete across all three, and every distribution business out there is doing exactly that. This partnership really hones in on that last point, which is price. How do you offer the right price to the right customer across the right channel for the inventory that is available at the particular location where they want it delivered from or where they'll pick it up? And so by bringing BigCommerce, our e-commerce front end, together with Pros powering that intelligent pricing, we believe in a future where distribution businesses are extracting every inch of value that they can while still securing that sale. And that's from Pros' real-time AI-powered pricing and embedding that into a commerce storefront. So I'm really excited about this partnership. I love the team over at Pros. They're fantastic people. They're absolute leaders in the space. But bringing this two together, previously, I think pricing and kind of CPQ as well, often sat outside of the e-commerce world. Well, we're the front end that can help power that across scalable storefronts and channels as distributors are growing, from large multinationals to smaller, mid-sized distributors that just want to eke out that extra margin where they can.
That's great. Well, that's all the planned questions we had here. This has been an excellent conversation. But before we sign off, just any quick final words or parting words for the audience that you might have here. Devashish, over to you first.
I don't know. That came out of okay. Parting words. I mean, look, just what I would say. Parting words is stay true to the people that you are working for at the end of the day, and those are your customers, those are your employees, and make the right decisions for them, because I really believe that when you do that, it flows back into value for everyone.
That's great. Lance, any final words here?
I think I'll say, no matter where you are on your digital transformation journey, someone's been there before, someone's done it before. Don't be afraid. Find the experts, find the right partners, find the right technologies, and they can guide you along that journey with the right team at your helm and the right people in the business too. So just seek out the experts and they can help you along on that process. Start today. There's no better day to start that journey than today.
That's a great way to end it. So Lance, Devashish, thanks again for joining this MDM Amplify podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the MDM Amplify podcast, which was brought to you by BigCommerce. If you have questions about today's discussion, reach out directly to our guests or to MDM. And for more insights and updates from BigCommerce on digital transformation in distribution and beyond, visit bigcommerce.com to find resources, demos, and plenty of information about the platform.